Schroer. Trent.
All right, we have a quorum. We'll go ahead and start with Senate Bill 304. You were cutting it close if you wanted to go first.
Just being efficient, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is State Senator Bill Eigel from the 23rd State Senatorial District. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Senate Bill 304, which deals with the expansion of charter schools in the state of Missouri. This is a bill that I've carried each year I've been in the Assembly. And specifically what Senate Bill 304 does, that under this act, charter schools may be operated in any school district located within a charter county, as well as any municipality with a population greater than 30,000. So this will be primarily our urban, suburban areas, as well as, I believe, Columbia and Springfield as well would be eligible under this program. So this is pretty straightforward, and I know many of you on this committee have heard me testify in advocacy of offering additional choice to parents. And this is something that we have fought for. I think this is an outstanding way to bring accountability to school districts across the state. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, Senator Gannon.
You mentioned to bring accountability across the state. Do charter schools have accountability?
Well, I think they do have accountability, Senator, because if they don't provide the education that the parent is looking for, the parent can withdraw their child and the dollars from that school.
So do you think charter schools have more accountability than public schools?
I think that by setting up a scenario where parents can withdraw their child and the dollars from that particular school, that is a version of accountability that currently does not exist in our public schools.
What about the charter schools that have been shut down because not just loss of money, but theft and
Well,
I mean, that's not accountability. I guess being a former public school educator and an advocate of public school education, I've been up here 11 years, and it's just been slam public schools, slam public schools, slam public schools. And my public schools in my district are successful. My kids went to a public school. I have an attorney and I have an engineer, as well as other students that graduated in my community in the city of DeSoto that have gone on to be very successful. I would send my children to any public school in Jefferson County and feel comfortable. We don't need charter schools in Jefferson County. I don't have one school that would advocate to the legislature that we need charter schools because our public schools are failing. I think public schools failed across the state during the pandemic. But you know what? Nobody knew what they were doing. Something totally new. Superintendents didn't know what to do. Teachers didn't know what to do. And everybody did the best they could. I guess, you're not the only one that presents bills to expand charter schools. But I'm just ready to start hearing people come up and advocate for public schools. And what can we do to improve public schools?
Well, I would argue that empowering parents with additional school choice options is good for public schools as well. I mean, looking at this through the lens of, well, we don't want any competition for the government-run monopoly that currently exists in our public schools. I don't know if that's very beneficial. In fact, because of that particular system, you just identified a scenario, the COVID environment, that led to us having in this state right now more frustrated parents, more angry parents about decisions that were being made through that government-run monopoly than maybe we've ever seen before in the state. And if you go by the outcomes that we have, there's a lot of outcomes that parents are, I think, are rightfully upset with. And so looking for a different way of doing business in a system that folks in my district, and I'm guessing in your district, want to see a lot of reform in, I think is a very valid conversation.
And just taking more money from public school education.
Yeah, but Senator, I don't think that you can tie outcomes to dollars spent. That's a big misconception in government, that throwing more money at something leads to better outcomes. We've thrown more money to public education every year I've been here in the state Senate, and yet the outcomes today are actually worse than when I got here, precisely because of that COVID
Well, how do
environment.
we know the outcomes are wonderful at charter schools when they're, you know, they're not required to meet the requirements of the public school education?
If those
Testing?
charter schools are not offering the education and standards that are being sought by parents, then the parent has the opportunity to pull their child and their dollars out of that charter school. I think that's a very powerful moment for the parent, and that's who I want to empower.
So you're telling me then that you think or you know that charter schools are testing students at the end of the year just like public schools? They're held accountable. Charter schools are held accountable just like public schools are held accountable? Test scores and
Actually, I don't think that they're being held accountable like public schools, in the sense that public schools don't have a scenario where parents can withdraw their child and their dollars. And that is a very powerful and significant contrast and difference between the two systems that we have here. Expanding charter schools, offering a choice for a parent in the event that their public schools are not offering the type of education and the level of education that they're looking for. I think I don't know, I can't think of a single scenario where empowering a parent like that is bad for a child.
thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Any other questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, anybody else testify in support? Senate Bill 304.
Good morning. My name is Kathy Jo Loy. I'm here independently as a Missouri citizen, but I do want full disclosure. I do work as a commissioner on the Public Charter School Commission, but I'm not here in that capacity today. This Christmas, I took 7 of my 8 grandchildren to Chick-fil-A, and they were all happy ordering soda and frozen lemonades, and everybody was happy until the 3-year-old who wanted a circle burger. And a circle burger is a cheeseburger, and you all know at Chick-fil-A we weren't going to get a cheeseburger. So it didn't matter how much the quality of the food we were getting or how completely they wanted to serve us with the best needs. They weren't going to give my grandson a circle burger. So I did what every great grandmother would do. I left Grandpa in charge of the other 6, and we went over next door, got a circle burger. Now that's a silly argument, I know, maybe, for talking about choice. But I don't think, Senator Gannon, is when we talk about offering choices that we're necessarily disparaging the choices that are there. So I just want to let you know that in our conversations about academic achievement and test scores, we've kind of changed that narrative today, and it's now about the different values and different philosophies of how we raise our kids. So how do we have an education system that is best for a diverse and free society? I believe we offer choices for all. Across the country where charter schools are embraced as a real option, not just a life support for failing suburban schools, we see amazing examples. Take Peace Valley Charter School in Idaho, where they've opened a Waldorf school based on the holistic child development, knowing, thinking, feeling, and willing. Waldorf schools are known to develop deep thinkers, and they result in proficient schools. The idea of charter schools in rural communities are often met with skepticism and outright hostility. Yet in Indiana, they've opened a 600-acre agricultural school that has project-based activities for in a farm setting that embraces their rural students. In New York, we can substantially compare educational results from ethnic and socioeconomic comparable students. Charters and traditional schools are often housed in the same buildings. Take Success Academy. They share a building with a traditional charter school. Success housed 10 out of 14 classes testing proficient compared to the 1 out of 20 in the traditional side. Same demographics, same school building, Vast differences. The Barney Charter Initiative is devoted to revitalizing public education through the classical K-12 education. They model an education that is rooted in liberal arts, sciences, and offers a firm grounding in civic virtue. American in orientation, cultivating moral character, they have over 8,000 students across the country on a wait list to get into one of their schools. And in Kansas City, my hometown, we once saw a dilapidated neighborhood that is being revitalized by a group of parents who wanted to see a school that reflected their diverse and progressive families. That's how the birth of the Citizens of the World Academy, based on the needs of their community, was formed and is successfully working on educating a really hard group of students in Kansas City. Although the Center of Education Reform says that Missouri has improved from a D to a solid C-, it's disappointing. Education should be fundamentally grounded in the free decisions of families and educators. Charter schools are one of the primary ways to offer free, tuition-based quality schools, and any opportunity to offer them to more communities will lead to Missouri's dedication and commitment to truly educating proficient scholars. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, anybody else testify in support?
Good morning, Chairman and Committee. My name is Vindy Clubb. I'm from Wayne County, and the Lord's allowed me the opportunity to be able to work with various organizations, but this morning I'm here on behalf of, as a Missourian, as a paying citizen, and representing me and my family. I support public schools. I support funding public schools, but I have two girls, 9 and 12. And we chose alternate routes in the public schools for my girls. And every child is different in how they need to be taught and how they need to be tuned in order to be the best vessel they can be. You know, we have competition in life. The fact that you guys are even sitting here is a competition in itself. I mean, you guys ran an election in order to be here because your district thought you were the best representation for them to be here. So why should we not do that with education? Not that we need to do away with public schools per se, but we need to have other options in order to provide every child in Missouri the best opportunity to have the best education they can have. And I guess the only thing about this bill that I may not like per se is it doesn't go far enough as far as all of Missouri, but that is what I have to say this morning.
All right, next witness in favor of Senate Bill 304.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. My name is Jeremy Cady. I'm the State Director for Americans for Prosperity. We want to go on record in support of Senate Bill 304. We definitely want to thank the sponsor, Senator Eigel, for sponsoring expansion of charter schools in the state of Missouri and trying to ensure that more Missourians have more options. I think it's something that you hear quite a few times from me today. We think that parents are the best stewards of their children's education. I think we need to make sure that we're also recognizing that charter schools in and of themselves are public schools. There is a difference in administration, but at the same time, they are public schools. And Senator Gannon, I understand some of your thoughts and your feelings on this, but at the same time, I don't think anyone here wants to slam schools that are administrated by the government. But at the same time, though, what we do want is to ensure that parents and families have as many options to educate their child as they see fit and in the way that they want to and they deem necessary. And I think that's what this conversation is about, is just making sure that parents have those options, and that's all. A lot of parents will choose, the current school system to send their children to, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are some parents that want something different as well, and we want to be able to open up and provide those options. So again, very supportive of the Senator for sponsoring Senate Bill 304 and expanding charter schools.
Next witness in favor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Aaron Baker. I'm a registered lobbyist for public school options. I want to thank Senator Eigel for sponsoring this bill and being a longtime supporter of school choice. I'm a public school district board member in my real life and supportive of charter school expansion. You know, our school district's very small, a rural district with 15 kids in each grade. I understand that charter schools have the same accountability that our school kids have. They take MAP tests, but they don't have the same regulation. And so one of the things that I've looked into for our school district is maybe having the option of our school board creating a charter school, which the state law allows. Maybe not having a school library, having those books on a cart, but we would still have the same accountability. And so this opportunity to have options for families and the freedom for families to choose what fits their kids' destiny, what fits their kids' learning, behavior, habits, is a win for Missouri families. So we just want to go on record in supporting the bill.
All right, next witness in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tricia Workman here today representing the Missouri Charter Public School Association. Want to go on record in support. Thank the sponsor. Aaron hit a lot of the points I did. Senator Gannon raised some good questions about accountability, but our students are subject to MAP testing. We get APRs. We're subject to all the academic portions of MSIP. It is some of the processes that are different for charter schools that we hope to make us more innovative. Approximately 49% of the students are attending charter schools in St. Louis and 39% in Kansas City, and we want to see those options there for families. Appreciate any questions, and thank you for the support.
All right, next witness in favor of Senate Bill 304.
Good morning, Jean Evans, the American Federation for Children. We are in support of this bill and anything that provides more options for families when it comes to their own children's education. We thank the bill sponsor.
All right, next witness in favor.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Alex Eaton, registered lobbyist for the Missouri Century Foundation. We would like to go on record in support of Senate Bill 304. Appreciate Senator Eigel sponsoring this. Happy to take any questions.
All right, next witness in favor. Anybody else in favor of Senate Bill 304? Seeing none, next witness in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Wood, representing the Missouri State Teachers Association. Missouri State Teachers has long held the position that if there is charter schools, they should be sponsored by the local school board, so there is accountability to an elected board for the tax dollars that are spent within that school, and that the students are, and the district, the charter school, if it were sponsored by a local school board, would be held to the same accountability standards that the public school in that community would be held to. Be happy to answer any questions.
Senator Beck.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So according to state law now, any school district can open a charter, correct?
If it's sponsored, I believe so, yes.
Yeah, they can across the entire state, no matter where.
That's my understanding, yes.
How many charter schools do you, if you know offhand, how many charter schools have actually closed down?
I would have to do some research on that number. We've heard of
It's over half.
quite a few, yeah.
It's over half. Where do those kids go when it closes
They
down?
come back to the public school, or in some instances, I assume they would go back to they could go to another charter in St. Louis or Kansas City.
They could do that, I guess, too, yeah. But I mean, they go back to the public school a lot of time. That's what I hear. But that's if the public school is still there, after we bleed them dry, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, what happens if a charter fails? It shuts down, right?
Correct.
What happens if a traditional public school fails?
Well, we've seen a couple instances where they've been taken over by a state administrative board, and in one case of the Wellston School District, it was shut down as well.
Yeah, but does that happen very often? I mean, we have schools that, have 0 kids that are proficient in English and math, and they aren't shut down.
Correct.
All right. So would you consider that those schools are failing?
I would say those schools are struggling, for sure, just like many other schools are, but in some instances, yes, they're failing, and I think,
Yet they remain open, unlike a failing charter school, which gets shut down.
well,
So you tell me what's more accountable: a school that gets shut down, that's failing kids, or a school that stays open, that's
well,
failing kids?
I think that as a state, there's a duty to provide education to our students, and hopefully that is a quality education.
I know, but you talked about accountability, and
Well, I'm talking about accountability
Yeah,
for
so-
taxpayer dollars back to
right. So you
an
tell me
elected board.
what's more accountable: a school that gets shut down because it's failing, or one that stays open even though it's failing?
Well, I think we're talking about two different accountabilities here. I think the accountability and transparency for those local tax dollars to be accountable to a elected board as opposed to an appointed board. And then there's accountability on the accreditation side of things that I think needs to be looked at as well.
I mean, if you think just because a board is elected that it's somehow accountable, I think that's
I think they're
that's a
accountable
ridiculous
to the
statement.
voters. I think they're accountable to the voters. They stand for re-election for those tax dollars that would be spent in those school districts.
All right, no further questions. Any other questions? Seeing none, anybody else testify in opposition to Senate Bill 304?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. We'd also like to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 304. When Missouri enacted its charter school law, we didn't really know what we were doing. One of the deficiencies has been corrected. That deficiency was we didn't really give any guidance to anybody who was going to sponsor a charter school, and so about a third of the charter schools that we got off the bat really weren't competent entities. Those have pretty much gone by the wayside. But the problem we haven't fixed, and that this bill would expand statewide, is that the charter school law is dumb at the highest level. That is, and contrast that with what Mr. Wood just spoke to. For a community and its resources and the public education that it provides through a district school, or if it's a community that has district and charter schools, if the community elected board is in charge, you can have decisions made that make sense for the whole community. But the charter school law, as it now stands, doesn't have that degree of intelligence. So what you get is a process that does have a standard for whether somebody is competent enough to check the boxes and be a competent charter school entity, but you have no regulation on, do we need that school? Every year, all across the school, or all across the state, school boards think about, do we have the right set of schools to meet the needs of our students now, the needs of our students going forward? And they know their students, they have 5-year plans on the resources, they have plans on what are we going to need? Are we going to need to build a new school building? The charter school law doesn't comprehend that. It looks in a tunnel vision way at, here's somebody else who wants to start a school. Here's somebody else who wants to start a school. You look at the lived experience, for example, in Kansas City public schools, you have way more attendance centers, so you have choice of where you go to school. And in most of those attendance centers, you now have a lot less to choose from once you've made that choice. So we think that this charter school law profoundly needs a retooling, and will stand in opposition to expansion of this law, the way it works, to other communities. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, next witness
Thank you,
in
Mr.
opposition, Senate Bill 304.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Lodewig on behalf of the Missouri Council of School Administrators. Go on record opposed to the bill. I don't know that Otto took a lot of what I was going to say. I think one of the things that I would point out, the example that we've used for several years is comparing a district like Springfield, Missouri versus a district like Kansas City. Similar public school populations. Kansas City has charter schools. Springfield does not. Kansas City has 14 high schools. Springfield has 5. Several years ago, the Kansas City School District actually hired an urban planner to come in and look at the demographics of the entire community. What they found was that families, as they were approaching high school, late middle school, early high school, as they were trying to figure out where they could, what their students needed to be successful after they went to high school, that demographic of family was leaving the community entirely, the ones that could. because they had a lot of choices, but there was not the robust educational opportunities for them within that system. And I say system based on the public schools and the charter schools there. As we look at expanding this law and potentially creating more choices, it just becomes a matter of how many schools is too many schools. What is the right balance of giving choices? There is always another side of choice, which is what it does to the students that remain in any sort of system that those students left. And we have to account for both of those situations and find that right balance to what this is going to look like if we're going to move forward in this paradigm. Happy to answer any questions.
Next witness in opposition, Senate Bill 304.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brant Shields, and I'm with the Missouri School Boards Association. We're opposed to this bill not because we're necessarily opposed to charter schools. We believe that charter schools that are sponsored by local districts, by locally elected boards of directors, that do have to follow the same regulations as public schools is a different story than necessarily charter schools that are sponsored either by universities or other non-elected boards. And while yes, they do take the same MAP test and they do report APR scores, there's a difference in the parity in regulation and in statute than there is necessarily on the accountability side. We're just not singing from the same sheet of music. So again, as some of my previous colleagues have stated, until there is some discussion about parity of the regulation and the statutes, I think that expanding charter schools under the current law is problematic. So.
Next witness in opposition, Senate Bill 304.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Ron Berry. I'm here on behalf of the American Federation of Teachers of Missouri. We do support charter schools. In fact, AFT was one of the first to help develop the charter system. But our concern is that, again, the local control issue, this is going to cost the state additional money just because of the fact that we passed Senate Bill 15 last year as well. So there is going to be more expense if you expand this, and I believe that if you look at the fiscal note, that this goes beyond just a couple of districts beyond Columbia and Springfield. Thank you.
Next witness in opposition, Senate Bill 304.
Good morning. I'm Tammy Henderson. I'm with the North Kansas City School District. We are actually the largest school district within the city limits of Kansas City, Missouri now, and the second largest in the state of Missouri. We want to go on record as being opposed to the expansion of charter schools. Again, primarily, we've seen what's happened within Kansas City public schools and the charters. There have been two that have just failed within the last month. I shouldn't say failed. One has closed due to some differences, I guess, in opinions from the board and the student and parents. But the other one from the fact that again, somebody mentioned earlier, Kansas City Public Schools, within that area, they now have like 15 high schools. They can't field sport teams. They can't provide a robust learning environment and the typical high school experience because there's been so much choice. They've got high schools buildings that would accommodate 1,500 students, which is the typical size of one of our suburban high schools. They've got 250 kids in there. So by providing more choices, you've really kind of decimated the whole, and we've watched this happen from across the Missouri River. So we just would like to be on record as opposed to charter school expansion. We also, to Senator Gannon's point, want to make sure that we are clearly seen as advocates for public education. Thank you.
Senator Brattin.
Just briefly inquire. So I mean, we see what's happening with the charter schools and what's happening in Kansas City, I guess. But what is the reasoning behind why we even went down the road of charter schools?
I think that my understanding is that the reason that you went down the road of charter schools was because of the Kansas City, Missouri public schools were unaccredited, and we understand that. Yeah. But by expanding it in this manner, you are now affecting every suburban school district in the Kansas City area. you have come far out into school districts that are highly accredited, that have blue ribbon schools, that have Milken teachers, that provide choice for their students. We offer a Pathways program in our high school that we work very closely with our business community to devise class work and experiences for our students, so when they graduate, whether they go to college, tech school, or just go straight into the workforce, that they have marketable skills to do so. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what
but
our
I guess
concern is.
you kind of answered my question. It's, we had to go down this road because of a failing school district that refused to do anything about their failure.
Well, they have now. They are accredited.
Well, you
They've made a
just
lot.
actually mentioned, the fact that, they have all these school districts and all these schools that are, have basically completely empty, and they've still refused to really consolidate and do the necessary changes
No,
to
they are doing that. Kansas City Public Schools is making progress.
well,
And-
but their
and-
proficiency scores aren't showing that.
But are the charter, not many of the charter schools are either.
Well, but if they're failing, they again go out of business. They don't continue to remain
Takes a while.
Takes a while. Well, how long?
Well, again, I'm arguing something that's not within my school district, and I was not part of,
I understand,
the
but the whole
decision-making
purpose of a
process.
board, I know they say accountability for taxpayer dollars, but no, it's actually to ensure that kids are being educated. But how many generations of kids have to fail, be graduated, not being able to read, write, do anything until we get this figured out? Or do we just
again-
provide options to where parents have a capability to go elsewhere to ensure that happens?
That is a school district, not my own. And so I am a little hesitant to address some of their failings, as you put it, because I've not been a part of that system. I grew up in the school district I'm in. I'm a fourth generation parent, student, mother in the North Kansas City School District. And we've been around for over 100 years. We have provided very much educational opportunities, choice within our school district. We have the ability to do that, and we want to protect that.
How many charter schools are in your school district?
None.
Exactly. Because you are doing the right thing. You are
Right.
investing and doing the right things.
That is true.
But the whole reason why we've had to go down these roads is because other school
That's fine
districts
to
are not.
leave it in the areas that are struggling. Don't apply it to all of us.
Well, thank you.
Senator Gannon.
Exactly. I agree with your last comment. Let's leave it in the areas that need it, St. Louis, Kansas City, and let the rest of our schools across the state,
Amen.
do well. I'm not sure charter schools across the state are going to solve the problem. They talk about public schools not getting it done. We can't guarantee that charter schools are going to get it done.
No.
And I think what it comes down to is the family.
Agreed.
And the big question is, how do we fix the family?
Yeah.
I think if all families were perfect, we wouldn't worry about other schools besides our public schools.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Next witness in opposition, Senate Bill 304.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Steve Carroll, registered lobbyist here on behalf of the cooperating school districts of Greater Kansas City. Just wanted to go on the record in opposition to the bill.
Next witness in opposition, Senate Bill 304.
Good morning. I'm David Lee Brush. I'm from Arnold, Missouri, and I'm a member of MOEP, and I'm here speaking as an individual in opposition to 304. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said, that charter schools can bleed dry public schools, and I have seen that happen in a different state. My son teaches in inner city Cincinnati at a highly rated elementary school in the Walnut Hills neighborhood, Frederick Douglass Elementary, and a charter school opened in an old laundromat across the street, across the back alley from the school, and they have taken a lot of kids out of that school. I don't know Ohio's charter laws to know their accountability, but I do know that it has taken the population of Frederick Douglass down enough that they're going to surplus some people and moving them to other schools in the district. Eventually, it could be that they have to move them out of the district and they will no longer have jobs. The downside to that is that when or if this charter school fails, and judging by what I saw when I was there being Mrs. Santa Claus at Christmas at my son's school, that charter school has got some issues already. Those kids are going to go right back into the public school. And then that public school is going to be understaffed for those kids. Right now, they're losing a K-1 teacher, and that means that probably the first grade is going to go from 14, a class size of 14, which is great for first grade, to a class size of 28. Just because they've lost students. Charter schools serve a purpose in some areas, but not in all areas, and expanding them is a bad idea. And if throwing money at a problem isn't the answer for public schools, then why do charter schools want so much of our money? And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Next witness in opposition. All right, last call for opposition, Senate Bill 304. Next witness for informational purposes only.
My name is Dr. Mary Byrne, and I'm speaking in favor and against. I guess that's why it's for information purposes, because my goal for education is to restore it to its original purpose, which is the preservation of the Republic. So, being a teacher, I have attached to my written testimony graphics to demonstrate that these options we talk about, including charter schools, if we use our public funds to fund them rather than deal with the limitations our state has imposed on the public schools through DESE's MSEP program, then what we're actually doing is funding the demise of a representative republic. Charter schools have a system of accountability, but it bypasses the state legislature in terms of funding, and it bypasses the local school board oversight. There are some charter school organizations, my understanding is Hillsdale is one of them, that won't invite themselves into an area unless there's local school district oversight. The deal is you have the same state board overseeing the public schools that people are fleeing from as you have giving oversight to the charter schools. And so I'd like to remind you of the history of Kansas City when 10 years ago, a Commissioner Castro, lost her job because of a scheme in which the billionaire Bill Gates was funding the Community Educational Entrepreneurship Trust, of which Kaufman was a member. Then Kaufman funneled money to the state board to have a report of analysis written by CEEC Trust to condemn Kansas City public schools. I mean, that was a fait accompli because that's their mission. And because the money was funneled, the person who scored the bid, even though there was a bidder at less cost with more experience, the person who scored the bid gave the awarded the contract to CEE Trust, and that person is now the commissioner of DESE. You see what I'm saying? There's no silver bullet here, and it actually lies within your power to change the statutes that are hamstringing the public schools. I am all for parent power. I homeschooled my own child because I didn't see the curriculum being adequate, but all public school districts have charters. Why aren't they allowed to have their own, to design their own curriculum for their own demographics, and in particular provide classical education, which the business entrepreneurship class doesn't want our kids to have. They attach our schools as workforce development as their human resource development departments. That's what we have to stop. The escape hatch, whether it's ESAs, vouchers, or charter schools, the escape hatch just grows government and grows data collection on our kids wherever they go. And if you don't think the federal policies that the corporations have also captured at the U.S. Department of Ed, if you don't think those policies are going to reach into the classrooms of any setting that parents try to escape to, you're wrong. That is the problem. The same Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that funded CEE Trust seeded the U.S. Department of Ed with its own employees from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We're captured unless we say no and start using our own power, our own authority, our own sovereignty as a state to take back our public schools. I'm open for questions.
Seeing none, next witness for informational purposes only on Senate Bill 304. Seeing none, Senator, do you have anything to add?
I do not, Mr. Chairman.
All right,
Thank you for hearing this bill.
That concludes our hearing on Senate Bill 304. We will now move to Senate Bill 255. Senator Brattin, Senator Arthur wants to go. Do you mind or? All right. We will move to Senate Bill 17.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for this opportunity to present Senate Bill 17. We're going to talk about the foundation formula. I hope you are as excited about this as I am. We all want to talk about the foundation formula first thing in the morning. So Senate Bill 17 contains two proposed changes to the foundation formula. One deals with the variable that's used to determine funding for districts with large numbers of impoverished students, and then the other deals with the manner in which the state adequacy target, or the SAT, is calculated. So I'm going to start with the SAT calculation change. I think we passed out a table. I'm going to reference Table 1 first. And the graph kind of conveys where Missouri has been and where the state is heading regarding public school funding. As you may remember, if you served here in 2016, the formula was underfunded by almost $500 million a year. And instead of trying to work to close that gap, the General Assembly passed Senate Bills 586 and 651 in 2016. And that imposed a 5% cap on the current operating expenditures recalculation, which is used to determine the SAT. So the practical impact of this was, with that cap, there was about a $400 to $500 million annual cut in the amount of funding it took to fully fund that formula. So overnight, the formula suddenly became about $500 million cheaper to fully fund. You can see what that impact was graphically with Table 1. Now, because of the cap, the SAT has not and it basically cannot increase, and that means our public schools aren't seeing increases. So that's what we're really trying to fix. We have several years of data now that show that that funding has not increased, despite things like inflation. Another issue is that the 5% cap was inserted into the funding portion, which is the numerator, but not the attendance portion, which is the denominator of the per pupil equation. So when you drive down the numerator of an equation, but not the denominator, the quotient is artificially decreased. So it becomes sort of a structural problem, further driving the SAT down. Now, if you look to the back, you can see the 5% impact on the SAT. Basically what we're experiencing is flat funding with that SAT. Put simply, the state is not investing or increasing its investment in our children's future. So I would prefer to move the cap entirely, and actually there are bills filed by Republican House members to do just that. But I've been around long enough to know that that's probably not a realistic possibility, and the cost of that would be about $500 million a year. And so by imposing are raising the cap from 5% to 10%. That's about $237 million a year. And that 10% cap would increase the SAT from where it is now, which is about $6,300 to about $6,600, which would get the state back in the neighborhood of where the SAT was before that 5% cap was inserted. And when that cap was inserted, the SAT back then was about $6,500. So it also addresses that numerator-denominator issue that I referenced by applying 10% to both sides of the equation. I think this is the biggest issue that we face in the K-12 funding space, and if we do anything related to funding this session, I think removing this cap or increasing it should be our highest priority. The other proposed change to the formula would involve the poverty weight. Qualifying for free and reduced lunch, it's not the best proxy variable anymore, and that's for a couple of reasons. There's a community option, which is a federal program that gives free meals to all students in some districts, and also there were the pandemic provisions, which free meals were provided to students. And that has created basically less of an incentive for a parent to fill out the free and reduced lunch form. So we don't really have an adequate or accurate gauge of who really qualifies, because why would a parent fill out a form if their kid is already getting that free lunch? DESE does certify the poorest children. So if a student is SNAP or TANF eligible, or they're enrolled in MoHealthNet, then DESE would certify that student as eligible. But that only captures the most impoverished students. There's that reduced lunch population where the parents may make too much for TANF or SNAP. Your eyes are glazing over. I'm really sorry. But and the biggest takeaway with this change from the poverty weight based on U.S. Census Bureau poverty data is basically it just captures students who qualify but for whatever reason are being undercalculated. So it's a better option. If schools still want to use the free and reduced lunch option, they can do that too, or do that instead. So these are the two issues that we're looking to change. Hopefully that explains what we're trying to accomplish, but I want to talk about the why. And I would argue that the stagnant funding has created or helped create a real crisis in public education. I think we all hear every day that teachers aren't paid enough. We know that schools have opted to move to a 4-day school week to save on transportation costs. Local taxpayers now shoulder most of the burden, so district funding is pretty inequitable across the state. And we've seen inflation eat away at the power of every dollar. So this feels like the right time. We now have years of data. We know what that cap has done. And I think if we don't address the challenge, I worry that the damage will be pretty irreversible. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none. Anybody testify in support? Senate Bill 17.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Stacey Priest, I'm representing Aligned. We want to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill forward. This is an issue that we have been looking at and thinking about for quite some time. I want to speak specifically to the poverty metric piece of it. As the senator mentioned, the community eligibility provision coming into play a few years ago really obscured what we know about how many students are actually in poverty in a particular district. It only takes a population of 40% eligible for free or reduced price lunch to qualify for the community eligibility provision. So if we're offering weight to LEAs in the formula based on their population of students in poverty, then you can see that that would not necessarily work. And to this body's credit, at the time that that was implemented, someone realized that that was going to be a problem for the formula and the way that it's weighted. And so districts currently, if they are community eligibility provision, districts are using the year prior to when they went on that. So what all of that means is that some of these districts are using a free or reduced price lunch rate from as far back as 2015. So that's one of the reasons that we would support this. Another is that a study that was presented to the state board in 2017 showed that students in a high poverty in a high poverty district are at much greater risk than students eligible for free lunch in a lower poverty district. And I have some data on that I can share, that the senator can share with you. But the point is that the Census Bureau information gives us a sense of what does the communities need. A recent policy brief from the Data Quality Campaign said that free or reduced price lunch is an increasingly inaccurate proxy for families' economic disadvantage, and that it fails to capture the systemic factors that influence poverty, access to opportunities, and individual outcomes. So Missouri needs a better way to measure poverty, one that is accurate, comprehensive, allocates resources with greater precision. Senate Bill 17 represents a positive step forward in providing students the resources they need to be academically successful, and we encourage you to support Senate Bill 17. Happy to take any questions.
Seeing none, anybody testify in support? Senate Bill 17.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Otto Fages on behalf of Missouri NEA. We'd also like to support Senate Bill 17. Just a couple quick things. We appreciate the sponsor bringing this bill forward, and both she and the previous witness, we think, did a pretty good job of explaining some of the important points for why the legislature should be considering this. I wanted to give you some good news, which is that the House Education Committee held a work session on this same topic 2 weeks ago. So there's interest in this topic on both sides of the building. And the witnesses who spoke, former Representative Wood and I both really agreed with the sponsor that the primary thing to look at is how do we address the fact that the basic per pupil amount has not really changed in 17 years. This bill alone would grow the SAT in the short run by 4.8%. which is more than it has grown in the 17 years. It's been a bumpy ride, but the net effect, it's more than it's grown in the last 17 years, which is not the lived reality of school districts when they're hiring teachers and other staff and trying to meet the needs of the students. We're strongly in favor. Happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, anybody else testify in support? Senate Bill 17.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Lodewigan on behalf of the Missouri Council of School Administrators go on record in support of the bill. Just to put some numbers to what we're seeing. Over the life of the formula, we've seen an increase in the state adequacy target of about 4%. During that same time, inflation has been over 30. And so, as Senator Arthur indicated, the value of the dollar has gone down. And so, it's no question that we are seeing that play out at the local level, either through local taxpayers being forced to foot more of the bill, or in some cases we are seeing stagnant and low teacher salaries as a result. So anything we can do to create more resources going to school districts is a very good thing in my opinion. So happy to go on record in support.
Next witness in support.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brant Shields with the Missouri School Board Association. Don't want to belabor the point, but also want to go on the record in support of Senate Bill 17. Again, keeping up with all the different challenges that we are now seeing with inflation and the raise in wage rates, this is a step forward. I think there's more conversations to be had about the funding formula, but this is a good step forward to help school districts stay competitive with the rest of the labor market.
Next witness in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Wood, representing the Missouri State Teachers Association. I think Mr. Lodewigan put it pretty well. When you're 8 times below the inflation level with our funding for our students, I think we've got to start looking at something to address that issue, and this bill certainly does that. So we're testifying support of the bill.
This is a question. I have a question for the bill sponsor. So you said the cap was $240 million ish?
Yeah, about 240 million, raising it from 5% to 10%.
So if we had it at 7.5, would that just cut it in half? Or no ish? All right. All right. Next witness in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Steve Carroll, registered lobbyist here on behalf of the cooperating school districts of Greater Kansas City and the St. Louis Public Schools. Just want to go on the record in support of the bill. Be happy to answer any questions.
Next witness in support, Senate Bill 17.
Good morning again. Tammy Henderson with North Kansas City Schools. North Kansas City Schools will be in support of this type of bill. Although we are a suburban school district, before the pandemic, we were nearly 50% free and reduced lunch. Our demographics are changing. We are having a tax on our revenue streams at both the local through economic development incentives and at the state level. So we would very much support anything that gives us some additional funds, and thank Senator Arthur for bringing this forward.
Next witness in support, Senate Bill 17. Next witness in opposition to Senate Bill 17. Anybody testify for informational purposes only? All right, do you have anything to add?
2 quick points. When the Blunt administration redid the formula, it was their understanding, they were under the impression that the formula would grow by about $200 million a year. So this would sort of put us back on that trajectory. The other point is that, as you know, the SAT is used in a number of educational programs, including things like ESAs. So while we heard from our friends in the public school, who are in the public schools, I think this has a broader impact too, and is for that reason worth discussing. So thank you for the hearing.
All right, that concludes our hearing on Senate Bill 17. We'll now move to Senate Bill 255.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Rick Brattin, 31st Senatorial District, bringing forth Senate Bill 255. This is an ESA program that not only would be eligible for just a select few, it would be eligible for all students, parents to have at their disposal. It would be, in this bill, would be subject to appropriation by the chamber. So it's not, the fiscal note is basically minimal until both chambers would decide whether or not to fund the entire program. We've seen, especially here lately since COVID, the need for parents to be able to have options and that want options. I can speak personally from my kids. I have 5 kids, 3 of which, actually all 5 went to public school. 2 have graduated. 1 will graduate this year from public school. My 2 youngers, though, we have decided to do a private option. We saw with COVID, just things weren't really correlating with where we thought our kids should be. I'll specifically talk about my youngest daughter. We noticed that something wasn't right, but by our district, by the teacher, she had straight A's. Everything was great. We just didn't feel that was correct in our GIST assessment. So we actually pulled her out and pulled both youngers out and went to do testing at a private school just to see where they were at to potentially move them. My 2nd grade daughter didn't even test to kindergarten standards. My 5th grader at the time wasn't even up to 4th grade standards, and they were, at straight A, basically honor roll, and to kind of add insult to injury, we find out that my youngest daughter, severely dyslexic, of which the school district had not even attempted to even get into, and I see this as a huge just a huge problem. When parents don't have options, they don't have the capability to be able to choose for their child what is best for them, especially when times are tough and money is finite, and the budgets aren't exactly the the best that they possibly can be for every student, and to limit the capability for students to be able to take those funds that should be educating them, and that those parents to have that capability to decide for their child and their student what is best for them, I think adds that level of first satisfaction, or their capability to know what's best for their child. I bring up dyslexia and what we've had to go through as parents, the enormous cost that's associated with the testing, the tutoring in unison with the schooling in general is a huge burden and a huge cost. And as anybody who's been around the education realizes, dyslexia is very rampant. It's something that hinders many students, and to be able to go through that level of tutoring required, we go through Orton-Gillingham. And I know I kind of sound like I'm going down a rabbit trail, but I just want to extend a type of program like this would allow for parents to be able to afford that sort of tutoring that helps to rewire the brains of children that suffer with dyslexia, and you could utilize that. Or if you just feel that this school district isn't mirroring the values in which you see fit, the type of curriculum in which you see fit. Yes, our school districts are hindered by DESE and the MSEP, restraints of what school districts can teach. That is another topic that we do need to discuss. But I just think that giving and empowering parents and their capability to be able to determine what's best and adding that level of competition will only continue to help our education system, regardless of their economic status or whatnot. Now, I know there's some naysayers out there that say this is an infringement or opening Pandora's box into limiting what these private schools and so on can do, or what they can do. But I would bring to bear, first and foremost, on page, let's see, I believe it's, yes, on page 8, line 70 is where it starts, all the way to the next page, 86. It's basically spelling out that these public schools that do, or private schools that do participate and do allow, they are not in any way, shape, or form a government body or under any sort of thumb that would restrict their capability to do business as they see fit and as they know what is best for the students that they serve. So it basically is almost a bill of rights for those school districts, those private school districts. I will say there is one thing in this bill that honestly, just through the drafting, I had overlooked. It does have to deal with the transportation portion. I would like to work with the chairman to remove that. I think that does go too far in that capability or requirement of the state to have to start to provide transportation. I know another kind of point of contention is dealing with community colleges, and would definitely work with the committee to if see fit to, I guess, more narrowly tailor to K through 12. The reason for the community college aspect was because, as we've dealt with, I mean, your taxpayer dollars, especially in terms of your property taxes, are going to fund your local community colleges. So I think that's more so of why that was included. But again, like I said, I would be happy to work with the committee to remove that. In terms of what can and can't be done, I mean, this honestly is an empowerment of parents. The parents are the determiner of what can and can't be done with their student. It lines out what can and can't be paid for with these ESAs, much like your HSA. I'm able to utilize that for any medical need that I really see fit. I don't have government coming in and tell me I can and can't, where I can and can't go. But it does have to be limited to educational resources. I don't see this as an infringement on anyone's capability to do anything that they see fit as a private institution or anything, nor do I want or would I allow that to happen. But I know that's been some contention with that. But I don't want to belabor the point. I know there's people to come and speak for and against, so I'd be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Gannon.
Yes, Senator. I certainly agree with everything you said about dyslexia. That is a tough one. And I have a great nephew that had to deal with that going all the way through school. I agree with everything you said on that. I just was curious, when you went, enrolled your child in the private school, do they have teachers that can work with her, or do you have you hired somebody to come in and work with your daughter, or how's that working for you?
Yeah, so we've got a private tutor that is specifically geared towards Orton Gillingham, which is the type of program that they've found to be probably one of the most beneficial towards dyslexia by the way it actually rewires the brain. But it is a private tutor, and it's not cheap, and we do this twice a week, and we have to go and take, and I mean, it's very extensive. Do the private schools have? Yes, they do have. We're getting ready to move to a different private school that does offer, that they have, the type of training.
Did the public school have somebody that would have that?
No, and that's the thing that was kind of where we reached out to the schools, realizing something's not right with the reading aspect, and we just thought it was like we were almost getting frustrated thinking that she just wasn't trying, and even the school district was like, oh, everything's good, but nothing was being done. And then when it was kind of brought to light that, hey, this was actually, she's diagnosed severe dyslexic, it's kind of like an oh well attitude, and that there really was no push desire to try to help in that. I know we had he's now a congressman, senator, or former senator in this chamber. His daughter was diagnosed with it, and the school district actually kept that diagnosis from him, and that for years they struggled with his daughter even knowing what was wrong and struggling in their schooling in every aspect. And if you've ever dealt with a dyslexic child, it permeates in every aspect of their education, because they don't know how to decipher what they're actually even looking at. So, and anyway, I can go on and on and on, because this is something that's been.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, first witness in support.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. My name is Jeremy Cady. I'm the State Director for Americans for Prosperity. We want to go on record in support of Senate Bill 304. Kind of continuing down the theme that we have for a number of pieces of legislation that you're hearing this morning. The case for ESAs begins with the idea that I think, one, a great education is the foundation of the American dream, and two, that parents are the best steward for their children's education. The latest information that I could find, 32 states, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico have varying education freedom policies within their books, including tax credit, scholarship programs, education savings accounts. Of those, I believe 8 now have education savings accounts similar to this, where the state actually gives the eligible funds to families to use to cover costs for school-related, private school, online learning, tutoring, curriculum, and so forth and so on. We believe definitely that Missouri should join in those states and a proper ESA program. And our preference would be an ESA program like this with a savings account over the current tax credit scholarship program that we currently have. And we'll be testifying in favor of yours here pretty shortly too. So we're definitely fine with expanding that as well. But this is definitely the preference, moving to this rather than a tax credit program. One thing that I would like to mention, in Senate Bill 255, and I mentioned this to the sponsor, I do think that we should probably remove the 166.640. One of the areas that we actually might be okay with is subsection 4 that you had mentioned before, that basically states that a participating school is autonomous and that it is not an agent of the state or the federal government. That, I think we're more okay with. I don't know if it's necessary, but the rest of it, though, the remainder of it, has the requirements of schools and parents that we don't believe are necessary. Parents are responsible for directing the education of their children and ultimately determine the success of any school, and those extra requirements should be removed. It could be very well that parents are trying to leave the requirement to teach to a test, and with Senate Bill 255, we're kind of ensuring that they would have to take that requirement, that burden with them. There are reasons that parents are choosing a different form of education for their children, and we believe that should be the standard in tests. That, the reasons why the parents decide, the families decide to choose a different form of education should be the standard in test that is used to say whether or not an educational system or product service is failing or being successful. As a homeschool father, we've got 2 little girls, 6 and 3. We've already started the 3-year-old on some of her curriculum too, kind of a pre-K type of thing. So she loves learning her numbers and drawing, and will write everything right now. And most of my team is actually homeschool families. I do appreciate that this program is 100% voluntary. There's no mandate that any particular family uses this system. The bill does not negatively impact any homeschooler in the state of Missouri. It allows all homeschoolers to continue schooling our children as we see fit. Again, each family is free to participate or not participate in the program depending on their individual needs, and we definitely appreciate that. And if you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, next witness in support, Senate Bill 255.
Good morning, elected officials. I'm here to ask for support of Senate Bill 255. My name is Kimberly Masters, and I live in a country town called Tubbets, not too far from here. I'm here today to share a familiar story that so many of our neighbors are going through silently throughout the state. As an educated airline pilot with a bachelor's degree, life happens and situations arise. I fell on de-icing fluid 5 years ago and have been unable to work. This has affected our life in many ways. My husband and I have 3 boys. 2 are dyslexic. 1 in 5 people, that's 20% of the population in this room, and this is a fact, are dyslexic. The public school is not prepared. They're not doing anything for these kiddos. A dyslexic person needs to learn to read the dyslexic way because they use their other side of their brain to read. Currently, in Jefferson City, it costs $50 an hour for 50 minutes 2 times a week. That's $400 a month. This often runs in siblings, and it does with our family. That's $800 a month we are paying out of pocket to teach our children how to read the dyslexic way. Once these children learn how to read, they are so much better off. But it is imperative that they learn how to read their way. Because if you try to teach them in the way that the public school is teaching them, it's like Chinese to them. This would allow the money to follow the child, this bill, so they could use it on what they need to help with their education. It would greatly help our family, as well as many other families that just want to do the right thing to help their children succeed. Many public schools don't know how to help. Ours did not, South Callaway. We currently attend St. Joseph in Jefferson City. It's a 25-minute drive for us each way, where our children are accepted by their peers because they are not the only known dyslexics in class. They do have a dyslexic program there, but it is not big enough to accommodate all the dyslexic students that are there. Being accepted by your peers when you're trying to figure out life is important. This allows them to do so. Our oldest was bullied in school in kindergarten. While the other side of the county road attends the Jefferson City School District, our side attends South Callaway.
If my oldest child had been able to make an easy switch to catch the bus on the other side of the street, he would have not have had to have dealt with a bully, as I, as a parent, had to convince him to get on the bus when I knew it was not okay. This was a very heart-wrenching thing to do as a parent. This brought us to switch schools, and we are thankful for the safe environment our children now have. Thank you for your time and listening.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none. Anybody else testify in support? Senate Bill 255.
Jean Evans, American Federation for Children. We're here to support this legislation. The biggest concern we have with the current program that we hear from parents is that it doesn't go far enough, and they would like to have school choice throughout Missouri. We thank the senator for bringing this forward. Oh, did you have questions?
Next witness in support, Senate Bill 255.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jamie Morris with the Missouri Catholic Conference, here to go on record in support. I think the prior witnesses have said a lot of what I wanted to say. I was actually even going to put in a plug for my kids and my wife's school at St. Joe, but the prior witness beat me to that in their good dyslexia program. But the point being with that is whether it's a parochial school, private school, public school, which school has the specialties, the niche, the ability to meet the family and the child's needs, whatever that is. And I know in these committee hearings a lot of times we'll start down the path of failing versus not failing schools. And from our perspective, it is first and foremost, it is what is the best need and the best fit for each individual student. Again, whether that's public, private, parochial. And we believe that the parents are the first and foremost educators of their children, and bills like these that will give them the opportunity to direct, how their child is educated is always the best way to go. So, again, thank you for hearing this bill, and be happy to answer any questions.
Next witness in support, Senate Bill 255.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Alex Eaton, registered lobbyist for Missouri Century Foundation and Yes Every Kid, wanted to go on record in support of Senate Bill 255. Happy to take any questions and appreciate Senator Brattin bringing this forward.
Next witness in support.
Thank you.
Anybody to testify in opposition? Senate Bill 255.
I'm Cheryl, Mr. Chairman, committee members. I'm Cheryl Schmidt with Families for Home Education.
Please make sure you speak into the microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm Cheryl Schmidt, Families for Home Education lobbyist. My husband and I homeschooled our 4 children for 27 years, beginning in 1982. We have continued to work with the homeschool community, encouraging new and seasoned homeschoolers. We have been directly involved with Families for Home Education since 2009. FHE is a statewide homeschool organization established in 1983. The purpose of FHE is to protect the inalienable right of parents in Missouri to teach their own children without state regulation and control. We understand SB255 will allow parents to establish a government taxpayer-funded education savings account to be used to send their children to a private school. Since RSMO 167.031.21 states a homeschool is a school, whether incorporated or unincorporated, that A has as its primary purpose the provision of private or religious-based instruction, we are concerned that it could possibly be construed that a homeschool is a private school. Families for Home Education is opposed to a homeschool being a part of any government-funded ESA. Along with government money always comes control and regulations. Therefore, we are respectfully requesting the committee to add wording which would make it clear to a homeschool is not included in this bill. Without making it clear a homeschool is not eligible for the ESA, Families for Home Education is opposed to SB 255.
Next witness in opposition, Senate Bill 255.
Good morning. I'm David Lee Brush. I'm with MOEP, speaking as an individual from Arnold, Missouri. In opposition to this bill, and thank you for the opportunity. There's 5 reasons that I oppose this bill. First of all, as I've said before, and I'll say again and again, to any bill that comes up, I am philosophically opposed to public money for private and non-public schools. And this bill will give private schools an advantage. There are plenty of additional costs associated with being a public school parent, so an ESA would be helpful for public school parents as well, so private school children will have an advantage. Second of all, there's a separation of church and state issue because some of these schools are going to be religious schools. And as a devout Christian and the daughter of a charismatic Baptist, granddaughter of charismatic Baptist, he always said, I want the church out of my government and the government out of my church. And so we need to keep that separation of church and state. Historically, there has been opposition to bills that would expand private schools and expand public money to non-public entities to the tune of 90% in opposition. For example, 1552 last year. The part that troubles me the most is section 166.640, 4.1, where it talks about that there shall not be regulation. There has been a lot of ink spilled this year on how to regulate curriculum in public schools, how to regulate professional development, how to regulate all kinds of things for public school teachers. And the reason given is because we have to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. But you're going to give taxpayer money to schools and not mention regulation, you're going to prohibit regulation of private schools that are going to now be receiving the same public money. And that seems like a gross double standard to me. Schools are not competitions. It's not a business. They are services. They do not need to be run as if they are competition. And with regards to the dyslexia issue, I can't remember if it was 2018 or 2019, the state mandated dyslexia screening for all public school students, K through 12, because we had to catch them up, because it was everybody, because they wanted everybody screened. They're going to back that down to have them screened by, I think it's the second or third grade. And then interventions would be put into place for those dyslexia students. That program hasn't had time to be able to grow and to be able to find its own. In the meantime, the legislature that has imposed this dyslexia training and this dyslexia intervention are spending time talking about patriotic civic education, what we can and cannot teach in history classes, what kind of professional development training districts can have, whether it's SEI or DEI or SEL, instead of saying, let's just forget all that nonsense and let's focus on getting the kids the help we need, because as a child who grew up with dyslexia, I completely understand it and could have used those interventions way sooner than I got him in college at Warrensburg. So we need to do more, we need to do different things in education, and none of this is that. Thank you so much.
One quick point on, and there was a lot to unpack with what you said.
I know.
Gonna address
That's
a lot
the case
of that.
with me a lot.
But the one thing I do want to address is you do have these curriculum fights on what should be taught and shouldn't be taught in public school. And the reason why is because parents disagree on those things. And so what this does is it allows parents to make that choice so that way their kids can be taught the way they see fit.
Well, I understand that.
And it's, in a lot of instances, you just can't do that with one option.
Well, I understand that, and I think that with choice, there are costs and sacrifices that come with choice.
It's actually not true. Almost all the academic studies show that academic outcomes improve. Parents are more satisfied when they have choices. That's
here's
just
the thing. School districts, and I'm just going to say it, school districts are not about the parents. School districts are about the children. And children are small humans. They are not the property of children, of adults. The schools are about the children. If the children are learning and the children are growing and the children are happy, it is not about the parents to micromanage every little bit of education.
So the parents don't know.
Micromanaging, no, not all parents know. No, they don't. Not every parent is a great parent. I had to deal with parents.
I can guarantee you that I know what's better for my kids than the school district.
And I don't doubt that you believe that. And I don't doubt that you do.
So,
but here's the deal. What I think, but how do I deal with people who tell, parents who tell their kids, if somebody's pushing you around, pop them in the nose and knock them down. They're not going to grow up to be good humans at that point. Our job is to take these small, tiny humans and along with the parents, in conjunction with the parents, help them grow in to be better adult humans that have to deal with other humans in the world. They are not property. We are not the dictators of our children. We are their parents. We have a responsibility to them, an obligation for them to help them grow to be people. But education is not about the parents. It is about the kids, full stop. Full stop.
all right, next witness in opposition.
Mr. Chairman, member of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. I think we would speak in opposition to Senate Bill 255. I want to say a couple things. The first one is to remind and commend the legislature for having addressed through Senate Bill 681 last session. There was a couple-year project to really develop what in our opinion is one of the best state policies on literacy that states have enacted, which is really providing resources and direction to higher ed institutions, to the State Board of Education and the department, and resources for our active and aspiring teachers to be better prepared to meet the kids' needs when they have dyslexia and other reading challenges, which is, as the previous witness said, and what the sponsor has experienced, is a significant fraction of our student population, and that's not going to go away. A perfectly normal kid can have dyslexia. It's just the way our brains are wired. Speaking and listening are normal. Writing is a weird thing that humans have been doing for a couple thousand years. On the other hand, the topic of this bill is really at the heart of what is the legislature's role and what is the role of public education. And we just need to make sure that we get the job done. The previous bill was really showing how we have some challenges in terms of the state financing of education. We're one of the lower state-funded school systems around the country. Right now, we have a lot of money in the state treasury. That's influenced a lot by federal policy and federal money, but the time will probably come when we look more like we did a few years ago without that, and there's going to be additional cuts in taxes that have been enacted and not yet put into place. So when you are looking at this bill, if it becomes law, and your constitutional obligation, your second obligation after paying debt, is to make sure that we finance and support our public education system that is for the purpose of self-government. So it's going to be a very challenging thing for appropriators to deal with. If we now have something that the legislature has committed to, and then are we going to be in a situation where year by year, whether you're able to meet the funding needs of the formula, whether parents are going to be able to rely upon this funding, is going to suddenly become a very tricky appropriations question, and you're going to have essentially sacrificing the investment you make for self-governance in order to meet this new challenge. We think that this really needs to be the fundamental challenge for financing our public schools, need to be reckoned with before there's any consideration of something that's kind of peripheral to the fundamental task that you all took as when you became legislators. Happy to answer any questions.
Next witness in opposition.
Hello, my name is Heather Fleming. I am the founder and director of Missouri Equity Education Partnership, and I'm here to speak in opposition to this bill. As Senator Brattin told the story of his daughter, there's so much in there that shows that, yes, we have problems with our public education system, but the way to solve those problems is not to take resources out of them and give them to private entities. See, as an educator, there were things that there was education, certifications, testing, et cetera, that I was required to to pass in order to become a teacher, in order to have the privilege of stepping into the classroom with, well, I had 6 classes of anywhere from 20 to 25 students. And I was one of the lucky ones because we had lower class sizes in Parkway because we had more resources. And one of the things that I was able to do is that when I did identify a problem, I was able to address those problems by pulling in resources, pulling in, special educators who were practiced in that. And so that's what we need the ability to do instead of that child and that funding, those resources being lost to a private school. And so I think that there are things to problem solve for, and I think that Senator Brattin has a very valid issue. But the other thing that we are called to do, that our legislators were calling them to do, is to problem solve for the biggest problems within our state, okay? And so the issue that we need to problem solve for is not just the issue as far as dyslexia is concerned, but some of the other issues with our educational system. As Mr. Fajan pointed out, we are one of the lowest funded states as far as education is concerned. We underpay our teachers. There's so much that we need to do. And so throwing money at a problem, it's not throwing money, it's throwing resources. It's throwing the ability to bring in the people that we need in order to best serve Senator Brattin's children and all the children of the state of Missouri.
Next witness in opposition.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Lodewigan on behalf of the Missouri Council of School Administrators. I'm not going to rehash some of the funding conversations that we've had already during this testimony. I do want to commend Senator Brattin on some of his presentation regarding sort of the accountability model. If we are truly going to move into a culture of choice and a paradigm of choice within the state of Missouri, we need to make sure that we have systems that are in place that provide an apples-to-apples comparison. One method to that is to potentially apply all of our MSIP standards to and all state laws to every school receiving public funds. Another option would be to figure out a way to create more flexibility within the public school setting in order for us to meet the needs of kids where they are, rather than be hampered by state law or state regulation from our Department of Education. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Next witness in opposition.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brant Shields, again with the Missouri School Boards Association. Generally, Missouri School Board Association opposes bills that provide public funds without the public oversight or accountability with all the state laws and regulations that have been passed by the legislature, generally for very good reasons. If public funds are going to be spent, we want the same public accountability.
All right, next witness in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mike Wood, representing the Missouri State Teachers Association. I'll just go on record in opposition. You've heard the reasons why.
All right, next witness in opposition.
Charlene Moore, Camden County homeschool mom. So I'm against this for other reasons beyond what some of the testimonies were. In ESAs, we're finding across the nation these are not working the way that we've been told. On top of this,
We're actually gonna pause really second because we're losing committee members. I want to go into executive session really quick. So I'll make a motion.
Back to this room? Or are you coming back to this room?
Yeah. It'll be quick. I'll make a motion to go into executive session. Then second, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it. I'll make a motion to bring up Senate Bill 136. It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye. All All those opposed? This is Senator ESlinger's bill that we heard last week, dealing with creating a plan for kids that are in school on what they're going to do after school, post-graduation. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to pass Senate Bill 136. Been seconded.
Chairman Koenig.
Aye.
Vice Chair Brattin.
Aye.
Senators Arthur. Beck.
Aye.
Gannon.
Aye.
Hoskins. Razor. Schroer. Trent.
All right, we have due pass Senate Bill 136. I'll make a motion to go out of executive session. All in favor say aye. The ayes have it. We are out of executive session. You can go ahead and continue. Proceed.
Sounds good. So 25 to 36% of all school-age children are already out of the public school system. They've chosen a different model, whether it be homeschool or private school. This is the dynamics of what we're actually looking at. So bills like this won't actually pull that many kids out. 70% of all students leaving the public school system are doing so due to the woke ideologies. So now what we're finding, though, is in every state that has universal ESEs, coming right behind them is the Drexel Fund and the Speedwell Foundation with their UN agenda schools that they're bringing into our state. So is this really the kind of thing we're doing and that we're wanting? Because on top of this, we're going to have private schools that do not have school boards. We have no option to take it back. In Camden County, we were lucky enough to take, well, not lucky enough, we fought to take back our school board, and we did. The only school in the entire state that didn't take ESSER 3 funds and no longer has the strings attached to those that all the other states are strapped to. Because again, every time government money comes, so do the regulations and so do the strings. Now, the lobbyists, they'll all tell you, well, there's money following the student. They'll tell you dollars following the scholars. Well, homeschoolers have a whole nother approach to this. We say with the shekels come the shackles. And that is across the board. We are seeing this in our nation. This is something that we do not want. Homeschoolers don't want anything to do with these bills. I know that the lobbyists will tell you differently, but they're paid to come up here and tell you things. I'm not. I'm here on my own dime. I've been homeschooling for 17 years. I also have a child with dyslexia. This is something we're dealing with. She's adopted, so it's not like it was a family thing. We don't know her history. We are working with her. We know the programs that work. Some of them are programs that are accessible through the public schools. The Lexia Core 5 program is actually very good. There are other things. The homeschoolers can access those programs in the schools as well. Tuition prices is another thing. If you pull up the schools that are taking money through the Most Scholars program right now, a lot of their tuitions are well above the amount that is being given through these programs. And again, you have that difference to make up. And if we're going to be honest, poor kids can't really afford that either. So no matter what, you're looking at the same thing. And then you're going to have the issue that we have in our colleges right now. So again, learn from history rather than repeat it. In our colleges, the tuition rates are so high because the government decided to subsidize them. So when we're subsidizing tuitions in private entities as well, the same exact thing will happen. And then you're going to run into student loans and all kinds of things for your K through 12 education. This is not something that we want. True freedom is without government. The Republican Party platform even says government governs best when they govern least. And so we'd prefer to be taken out and govern least in this rather than more. And a lot of people will say, well, you don't have to take the money. And that's true. But in West Virginia, we're finding already that homeschoolers who didn't take the money, and they did a legal distinction between them. They said, okay, these are the homeschoolers. They have a legal distinction of those who take the money and those who do not. And yet right now, 2 years after West Virginia passed that bill, they're coming after the homeschoolers who didn't take the money and adding regulations and regulations and regulations. And we've seen this happen with the Most Scholars program already with the overreach onto the homeschool community. And in this bill, in particular, when you have SB255, it says the treasurer shall adopt rules and procedures. Well, you know how great that turns out, because we've seen how that worked in the Most Scholars program. And the homeschoolers ended up with regulations that have far exceeded state statute and are overreach into our community. So I would just request that homeschoolers be excluded, and honestly, I'm just opposed to this bill altogether, because government funds always come with government strings.
All right, next witness in opposition.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Waltman, and I'm in opposition of this bill just because I'm a homeschooler and it doesn't exclude us, it doesn't include us. I would just like to see some wording that would say that we're excluded.
Thank you.
Next witness in opposition, Senate Bill 255. Anybody testify for informational purposes only? All right, Senator, do you have anything to close with?
Just briefly, as a homeschool parent, you are excluded from this until you decide to partake from it. Nothing in this allows the government to go in and dictate any form of anything in curriculum or anything. It just allows for parents to have the capability to have these funds. And with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the hearing and the time.
All right, that concludes our hearing on Senate Bill 255. We will now move to Senate Bill 360. Thank you, members of the committee. Senator Andrew Koenig from the 15th District, here to present Senate Bill 360. This is dealing with ESAs. It basically does an update to our currently Most Scholars program. It does a couple things that we passed it in 2021. Currently, or last year, there was 290 students that participated in the program. What this does is it removes the $75 million cap, but it still would have to go. It would only go up with inflation. We also have another escalator that's tied to the funding of public transportation for public schools. We also expand geographically. Currently, it includes only municipalities that are 30,000 or greater, but some of those municipalities go into portions of counties, so it would include that whole county if a portion of that municipality is in there. Another thing it does is for kids with special needs, it increases the amount that they can receive to the same amount that the public schools would get, because these kids are more expensive to educate. And then also we create a third category. So currently in the program, there's two categories. There's kids with special needs, and then there's free. And then the second category is 200% of free and reduced lunch. We create a third category that would just include everyone else. I passed out something that looks like this. There's some good statistics on here. It shows some polling data on whether public education is on the right track or the wrong track. And that line is hovering around 60%, saying it's on the wrong track, with around 32% saying it's on the right track. I mean, this is below polling numbers that you would see for President Biden or President Trump, and this is for public education, which shows that parents are not completely happy with their options. On the second page, you'll see satisfaction of parents, with programs like this, and the reality is parents love these programs. The kids that participate, why? Because they're choosing it. The next page shows the effects of test scores in public schools. So there's a lot of notion that programs like this hurt kids that are left in the public schools. This is just simply not true. The vast majority of evidence shows that academic outcomes improve when you introduce programs like this. And then also there's some concerns that there might be some negative financial benefits or negative effects on public schools financially, and this is also has been proven to be false. Shown on the vast amount of studies that were done on that. So it does not hurt the public schools at all. All it does is provide more options for kids. And so with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Anyone to testify in support, please come forward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. My name is Jeremy Cady, State Director for Americans for Prosperity. I want to go on record in support of Senate Bill 360. I want to thank the sponsor for sponsoring it and bringing it forward. We like a lot of the changes that he's making. Definitely very appreciative of it. Again, it's, the theme of the day is kind of that parents should be directing the education of their children. And I think, this continues that. I would, kind of similar to Senate Bill 255, There are still some requirements as far as like testing and a few other items that we think probably are not necessary, and we'd probably actually prefer to see those removed. But otherwise, we believe this is a step in the right direction. So thank you very much.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else to testify in support? Please come forward.
Jean Evans, American Federation for Children. We are in support of this legislation. And I want to thank the senator also for providing, the information about these studies. And any member of the committee would like more information about the studies that show that public school performance actually improves in places where they have broad-based school choice. I'm happy to provide that. Any other questions for me?
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in support?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Once again, Jamie Morris with the Missouri Catholic Conference here in support. Just want to thank the bill sponsor. We've been a big supporter of the ESAs and program, and anything to help expand that, we are in favor of. And really, most of what I said for the last bill go for this one. So, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in favor? Please remember to fill out a witness form.
I just want to reiterate that since we live in the country, we do not qualify for the current rules under this law, but with this expansion, it opens it up to people that live in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please remember to fill a witness form out for this bill. Anyone else to testify in support? Please come forward. All right, seeing none. Anyone to testify in opposition? Please come forward. Please remember witness forms.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mike Lodewigan on behalf of the Missouri Council of School Administrators. I'm just going to ditto what I said in the previous testimony on the previous bill regarding accountability, things that we need to be improving on in the public education setting is vital right now than it's ever been, regardless of whether or not we do choice. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Anyone else testify against? Please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Brant Shields, again with the Missouri School Board Association. Again, very similar testimony on previous bills for public accountability, for all the rules and regulations and laws that this legislature has passed. Again, there's probably very good reasons for many of those. That's why we should continue to have those for anything that is a public expenditure.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next in opposition, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Wood, representing the Missouri State Teachers Association. I think what Mr. Lodewigan and what Mr. Shields just said, we agree with that testimony.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else in opposition, please come forward. It's like Groundhog Day around now.
It is. That's also my birthday, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Excellent. Mr. Chairman, member of the committee, Otto Fajan on behalf of Missouri NEA. At this point, we just speak in opposition. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Please come forward. Opposition.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Ron Berry on behalf of the American Federation of Teachers, and as a devout advocate for public education, we just want to go on record as being in opposition.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none. Anyone else to testify in opposition? Please remember to fill out a witness form for each bill. Thanks.
So again, Charlene Moore, Camden County homeschooler, been doing this for 17 years, have 10 children, in opposition for opposite reasons of most people. However, I am. If you guys know anything about the Most Scholars program and what was done to homeschoolers through that, there was a little phrase in there that said may promulgate the rules, and the treasurer was allowed to make rules after the bill was passed. Typically, we would call this pulling a Pelosi, and completely annihilated the homeschool rights. In the original bill, what it did say for regulation was teaching to the test. All homeschoolers must take a test in order to participate in this. We don't teach to a test. We teach students. We teach them knowledge, we teach them history, we teach them science, but we don't teach them specific facts that they have to know in order to pass and move on. We teach them for the whole of the child. Again, homeschooling is a lifestyle. It's not schooling at home. Some of the other things that were done to the homeschoolers, they now have pretty much a whole another category called state certified homeschoolers. That's what they're considered if they take the Most Scholars program. The other thing is our curriculum has to be approved. It's not something where you can get reimbursed for your money, but what happens is there's a digital bank account called Class Wallet, and you should look into them because there's some issues there. You should look into them. We'll go with that. But you can only select from Class Wallet approved vendors. On top of this, what is the money actually allowed to be used for? Well, it's allowed to be used for your textbooks as long as it's a Class Wallet approved vendor. So is Becca, Bob Jones, Alpha, Omega on there? They're Christian curriculums. Are we allowed to use them, or is this stifling our religious rights as well? We don't know because we can't see that information. Pencils and papers, though, those aren't included in this. You're not allowed to use those with this program. With this bill, there was also another bill in conjunction with it called the Empowerment Scholarship Accounts Board Bill. I don't know if that's actually what it was called, but that's what it did. It established a school board that's unelected over the Most Scholars program. On that board is DESE, the Commissioner of DESE, and the Commissioner of Higher Education. So the very thing that most of these kids are trying to get away from is the very thing that was put over top of them. Government followed into these schools. So now we have government public schools, government private schools, and government homeschools. This is not okay. Lee Burton's the founder of Classical Conversations, said, let's eliminate all forms of government, funding, of education, and be free indeed. See, the only true freedom for homeschoolers in private schools is to not accept the money. As a matter of fact, our local Christian school in Camden County doesn't even take federal milk money due to the regulations and the overreach into their school. You know, one phrase, I said this before, but one phrase that the homeschoolers always say is, with the shekels come the shackles, and we've seen that repeatedly. If you guys don't know who Scott Woodruff is, he's a senior counselor for HSLDA. He says, where the shadow of government money falls, the weight of government regulation will follow. Again and again, our leaders in the homeschooling world are telling us that this is dangerous legislation. And quite frankly, there's a hard line to be drawn here. The homeschoolers want out. There is no, okay, we'll make it better because we're not going to do background checks on you, which is what this bill does. It does take away the background checks, and that's great, but why were background checks for parents ever in there to begin with? I mean, let's be honest. This is asinine. It shouldn't be in there at all. We want out. We want out of the whole program. We don't want anything to do with it. Eliminate the homeschoolers from this. And again, I'm glad we're having an honest conversation. The lobbyists have been telling us all that, you know, this is for poor kids to get them out of the system. Well, in this bill with the new cross-out, it's now for any income. So rich kids can have this too. This sounds more like wealth distribution to me. Redistribution, I'm sorry. That's all I have to say.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Anyone else to testify in opposition?
Hi, I'm Lindsay Waltman, and I'm a homeschool mom, and I'm against this bill just because, you know, homeschoolers shouldn't have the government in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone else in opposition? Seeing none, anyone for informational purposes only? Nope.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me. Mr. Chairman and committee members, I'm Cheryl Schmidt, lobbyist for Families for Home Education. I am testifying for informational purposes only on SB 360. Families for Home Education appreciates that Senator Koenig has included language that will exempt homeschool parents from the background check requirement the Treasurer instituted through regulations. Although FHE would prefer a homeschool be taken out of this program, with this improvement, we are neutral on the bill.
Thank you. Anyone else for informational purposes only? Seeing none, Senator, any closing remarks?
I don't think so. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
On the bill that we voted on, I'm going to leave the board open for the next 10 minutes for people, senators that weren't in, and then also I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. In that time, in 10 minutes?
No, we'll go ahead and adjourn now, but I'll leave it open. the
Okay,
board open
gotcha.
for 'em.
All right. Do you want to make the motion now?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it.
Absolutely.